Welcome to another Planetary Annihilation gameplay video. We are going to have a 3-player free-for-all with any luck here. This is just a random game. I don't believe it's Gentleman's Rules, although I will start doing games with Gentleman's Rules in them shortly. Other than that, we will wait for the map to start and jump right in, I guess. So, here we are. Let us choose a spawn point. I'm going to just go straight up here for the North Pole and then delete my commander the moment we spawn in so that I can spectate this game. I'm just going to apologise for the last couple of update videos. They've been a little bit brief. That's because of various things happening outside and in IRL. When I say outside, I mean in IRL. Anyways, but those will be returning back to normal as soon as the updates come out, with any luck at least. Other than that, I will begin doing Gentleman's Rules games and the higher end games with any luck, and also doing a couple of collaborated commentaries, which should be good as well. Stick around for those and share to your friends if you know they are interested in Planetary Annihilation. It's going to be a good few weeks, especially now that the alpha's really picking up with some of the updates. As you can see, we do have a couple of new time players in, so that's going to be interesting to see what they make of the game. And we're in, so let's go straight away and go bye-bye with the commander. So with any luck, there we go. Slightly laggy there. Right, let's have a scout around and see where the Lord of this, Corvettes and Retrograde are, preferably without zooming out too far. So we can see Corvettes in black just sitting there idle at the moment. Other than that, the South Pole is going to confuse me with that giant marker. The Lord of this is right by a naval advantage point, going for 1 metal, 1 energy, and by the look of it, a second metal after that, though they altered their build order. I would recommend doing metal, energy, 2 metal, and then going for a vehicle factory, preferably, like is being exhibited by Retrograde here. I'm not sure how much Retrograde has played. I do believe, however, that Corvettes and the Lord of this are both new players. And I have a feeling Corvettes might have gone AFK or having connection problems. We shall see. But the longer they have those connection problems for, the further behind they are going to get. Now here you can see that we've gone 2 metal, energy, then factory, then the 3rd metal. This is an interesting idea, because that way you can get your fabricator out earlier, and building up this 2nd energy will allow this fabricator to be actually economically viable. Back over here, we are having a lot of dithering around on the part of Lord of this. Can't quite make up their mind as to what they want to build or where they want to build it, which is probably not the best idea, although, as they say, they are a new player. So that should, you know, they will be experimenting with a few things, and they've decided to go for a bot over vehicle factory. That is definitely an unusual early game build. Here we've also got more fabricators building up your economy buildings, and even a air factory, which will produce the scouting ability of Retrograde 4. Other than that, we're getting more econ buildings over here on the part of the Lord of this. And Corvettes has finally joined us. Okay, well, given the distance between these bases, Corvettes might be able to claw back some viability in this, going for metal, energy, and what's your next one? It's another energy. Okay, that's also an interesting build. A couple of interesting builds here, although they are the new players, so maybe they're just experimenting and going with what their gut instinct rather than going with experience that I have a suspicion Retrograde actually has. Especially with 3 fabbers going on 1 factory, in fact make that 2. But all of these metal sites here are going to produce a great economic viability, and even that energy power plant there, 4 to 6, is a good strong economic build. In fact it's 4 to 7, in fact almost 7 to 5. But once that air factory is done, I will suspect that we'll start getting fireflies going out to go and scout around and find spawn locations. Something interesting here, the Lord of this getting an early radar up, so they will be able to see the spawn location of retrograde and can therefore start to take defensive measures to account, especially with interesting early storage buildings here on the part of the Lord of this. I'd suggest getting stronger economic input before getting your reserves up. Excuse me. Going back over to Corwet, you've got a vehicle factory starting to produce its first fabber now. In fact, it has produced its first fabber, what am I saying? Starting to produce its second. And constant economic buildings going up as well. You really want another metal or two going around. There's a good one there. That's good. Wow, that's a lot of fabricators on one energy. I'm not sure how long that's going to remain economically viable and sustainable. Maybe not so, as they've all been cancelled. This is one thing we can't really tell with Spectator at the moment, what people's economy is like. And in fact, I do believe that was the Firefly that got shot down. Which, although now Retrograde does have a grip on both players' spawn locations and can factor that into their equation when making an army. As we can see now, they're starting to get some hummingbirds. Not hummingbirds, what am I talking about? Fabricators. The green confused me, so much green. But a lot of vital fabricators going around in Retrograde's base, especially where we get some of this early econ and building some early defences, which is also good, especially some of this anti-air, although they haven't done all that much scouting in terms of efficiency and even intelligence, because they're getting anti-air turrets when there's no other air factory exhibited by any of the other players, which, as I say, is going to be interesting. But we have got some air fabricators now, so those will be able to do a good job in terms of building. And there are your laser turrets. Maybe they'll start turtling forward and putting pressure on the Lord of This's base. Although we'll see that when it happens, if it happens. More econ buildings going up from Retrograde. Other than that, Corvet's building constant energy and metal. This is a good early game build, although, as I say, this isn't Gentleman's Rules, and Gentleman's Rules would make this a lot more tricky for these players, because in Gentleman's Rules is basically playing the game as though it would have been in retail. So, for instance, metal extractors go on metal sites and nowhere else. Only one wall per turret, because I believe at the moment there's a problem with units prioritising and walls over turrets and things like that. So, yeah, Gentleman's Rules games are great fun to watch, and I hope to start doing casts of them in the very, very near future. Now, we do have an air factory gone up from Corwet, so maybe we'll see some fabricators, maybe even some hummingbirds or bumblebees, or preferably some fireflies, because scouting really needs to be done on the part of Corwet to see what exactly is going on. And we have a reasonable number of bot fabricators here from the Lord of This, maybe waiting for their econ to build up before continuing with this artillery installation. Although they really want to be getting that going very, very fast. And this is what I say here, like all of this wall spamming here will make it very difficult for the Lord of This to make a ground push, because of the fact that the game is still in its alpha stage. And in fact, we do have an advanced air factory already going up, producing some Hornets, which is really going to shake the game up a little bit. Maybe we'll see some commander sniping, especially since there's a reasonable lack of defences on the part of Lord of This and Corwet. Although Corwet has got an advanced vehicle factory now, but at least the Lord of This is producing ants at last, while maintaining that economic build-up, which is what you always want to see in games like this. You always want to balance your econ with your military build-up. We've even got a naval factory being produced by Corwets, which ought to shake things up a little bit. Maybe if they can get a long-range destroyer out, they can already start putting pressure on the Lord of This's economic buildings, which are on this peninsula right here. Other than that, personally, I see the advantage going with Retrograde at this point in the game. especially because we have the advanced fabricators, all of the fabricators focusing on econ buildings, although that power gen is taking an age to go up, so maybe their econ isn't in as good a state as we'd have hoped at this point. Especially with that commander building that power gen, it should be going up faster, so one can assume their econ is suffering greatly, and other things are getting shot down over here. In fact, that is the artillery installation being finished, and it's going to put pressure on these frontline defences from the retrograde. And even another one going up because they see the advantage, they're going to exploit it for as much as they can, although retrograde does have the Hornet and a Bumblebee here as well, and as soon as they get economic viability they will probably start producing a lot of Bumblebees to go and put pressure on this, but they do have one anti-air post here, but ideally they want more to shoot down those bombers before they drop their payload, and that is really the idea with controlling units well. Other than that, we have the naval factory produced, we have the blue bottle made as well. This could even start shelling the Lord of This's base, so things could definitely start shaking up a little bit now. Other than that, we do have this sort of mini defensive position creeping round from corvettes, which could also put pressure on these ants should they decide to make an advantage. An advantage? An aggressive push. But as I say, this blue bottle is going to try and take out this econ structure over here. The one gripe I have about 3-player free-for-all games at the moment is that you often get situations like this, a sort of piggy in the middle situation, where the person in the middle is definitely caught between two bases, and it does become a lot more difficult for them to cope with that. As a result, you can see here that they've had to produce a lot of buildings over here while sacrificing their econ buildings. If this commander can get a point defense up, that blue bottle will be toast very soon. Or even if they move these ants over, they can start to work it off. But obviously they're focusing a little bit too much on these walls and this little base over here, which ought to be interesting. A lot more Hornets being produced constantly, as well as Bumblebees. Constant econ building production from retrograde will continue that viability. And I think retrograde might even have given up on trying to defend this, especially since the artillery has taken out those two fabricators. But the thing is, why would they need to defend a wall when they do have a reasonably strong air force at this point? A few T2 and T1 bomber mixes can make short work of this little position here, especially considering there is very little other anti-air scattered around the base, so if that can be sniped, things will be killed off very quickly indeed. And it would be interesting to see whether retrograde decides to move up and build a base up here to maybe swing round and push back into corvettes, who has actually disconnected. Maybe a connection problem, hopefully they'll reconnect. But they did have an advantage with these blue bottles they were churning out in terms of putting pressure on the Lord of this. It's a shame really, but although we do see this continuous army of bot fabbers going around, probably going to focus down on a building to build it a lot faster, although we'll have to see what happens. I think retrograde and the Lord of this currently are having a reasonable standoff in this sort of artillery wall line position, although the difference being retrograde is deciding, okay, he's preoccupied with shelling my walls, which does no damage to me whatsoever. I'm just going to sit back here and calmly and collectively produce these air units, bombers in fact, which will be able in large enough numbers to just swoop in and make short work of this base. I wonder whether we will see Cornets reconnect, but as I say, they did have connection problems earlier in the game, or at least perceived connection problems, because they did remain idle for quite some time. Another thing I have to apologise for is my voice at the moment. I do have incredibly bad hay fever as a result of spending the weekend in a place where my hay fever just goes off the scale. Hopefully that'll be back to normal in a couple of days as well. Again, all of these Fireflies and these bombers here, the Fireflies will probably go in first and scout the ideal path for the bombers with the least resistance, so that you'll lose less of them in those engagements. Or at least that would be what I would do, and maybe even use the Fireflies as bait to distract the anti-air cannons. But we'll have to see how that churns out. Interesting to see what this advanced vehicle factory might begin to produce soon. So those Fireflies have just scouted over and seen where the econ buildings are. The fact that this advanced vehicle factory is going up is protected by another anti-air. We do have ant-armies over here, and here come the bombers, going for the commander snipe indeed. And in fact, instead, they do hit the econ buildings instead. There is the anti-air there though, which is going to cause an issue for those Hornets should they not decide to take out the anti-air first. Which is a shame. There it goes. They've only got 3 more by the look of it. Their connection speed is not the best right now. Only 2 Hornets remain, and they are going to circle round an anti-air position. That is not particularly good control there from retrograde. In fact, those bombers are going to get taken out, and ideally, yeah, that other one's going to get sniped as well. Especially on this final pass, and there it goes. Oh, no, it still manages to survive. This is good. A lot of green spray out into the sea there. Wonder what the Hornet's aim is now. I mean, it's only 1 Hornet, it's not going to do a particular amount of damage. Other than that, they aren't really doing much in terms of replenishing their forces. Ideally, you want to do that, especially since this army advance is still a threat and could potentially just walk up. Though the only problem with that would be these few tier 3 laser positions and tier 3, what am I on about? 3 cannon tier 2 laser positions, there we go. That always confuses me, the fact that 3 cannons on a tier 2. Always confuses me, I'm too used to playing Supreme Commander. I will get better, I promise. Other than that, we do have these blue bottles because Corwitz has reconnected. The blue bottles are going to put pressure on this base from the Lord of this. The commander is very exposed to those blue bottles and is going to want to get out of there. Maybe even produce another artillery installation to put pressure on those blue bottles, or maybe they're going to walk around and produce an entirely different base on a new part of the planet, which personally, that's what I would advise. While everyone's preoccupied with this sort of base here, with its sort of mini front here, and econ production, one will assume that things are still being done in this base. But if everything escapes, but it is going to go past the radar, so I wonder whether Corwitz is actually going to see that. We'll determine that later in the game if Corwitz manages to find them early on. And this energy generator here, the T2, is really going to give economic viability to retrograde to start mass producing more units. Although we do have a lot of fabricators assisting, so that is going to put the extra pressure on that economy. Personally, what I would do is have maybe 1 fabricator, doing constant mass, maybe even 2 doing constant metal, 2 doing constant energy, 1 having a queued up factory production thing, just making more and more and more factories for that mass production later on in the game. And then having everyone else either assist the commander, or building defences while the early game armies are churned out, and then maybe in the middle game start to do what we can see here in terms of the mass fabricator assisting once you have that economic viability. But that tier 2 metal there is really going to put pressure on until it's produced. Once it's produced though, it will pump resources back in. Other than that, the blue bottles have made complete short work of the econ field over here of the Lord of this. Other than that, the Lord of this's original base is pretty much not really doing anything, and we can see that by these 2 advanced energy plant, which is really a bad idea considering they have no econ buildings. They really want to get the commander basically starting from scratch if I were them, because other than that, they don't have any econ buildings really. They have these 4 metal here. But that is it. that is all they have. They want to produce a lot of T1 energy, a few more T1 metal, and getting some factories out while they still have their advantage of not having anyone looking at them. And that these artillery positions are almost finished with the walls, so that is going to make those obsolete. In fact, they are now obsolete completely because the blue bottles have finished them off. On the count of retrograde, we have a lot of hornets coming out now. I think almost constantly. But they are taking a while because of the strained economy. Other than that, we see quite a few idle fabricators who could be doing T1 production. Commander moving up here, maybe starting to produce a second base. Other than that, Corwetz has always sort of left Corwetz to his own devices and is really getting the vehicles done with a mixture of spinners and levelers, I believe. I can't quite see past the... No, those are just regular ants at the moment. Although I do believe there are some T2... indeed there is one T2 leveler in with those spinners and ants there, which are going to sweep through and clear up the rest of this base, of the Lord of this. Maybe even continue to press on and put pressure on retrograde, although they would probably find that that would not be in their interest because of these point defences. But we can assume that these levelers are going to continue to be produced now. The advanced radar in the middle of the base, not really going to be overly useful considering it looks like retrograde is almost on the other side of the planet. I'm not sure if the advanced radar is really going to reach too far in there, although it will cover the Lord of This's base, which should be good. The Lord of This really needs to get a move on with this secondary base if they are going to survive for any decent length of time, because as soon as this army starts pushing around again, they are going to have a nosy around this South Pole and they will see the Lord of This' second base, which is really going to put Lord of This in trouble. Other than that, we do have Fireflies here standing idle who could have been moving around and getting some scouting done. Maybe even flying over Retrograde's base, which would really be in Corwetz's advantage to see all of these hornets being produced so that they could start producing hummingbirds, or even T2 anti-air defences, which would really put pressure on the retrograde to maybe change build strategy. I'm just going to make a short blip in the recording here. And we're back again. Commander's just going to run around. I'm not really sure what the retrograde is actually doing. But they are just going to continue to run around all the time. That army is going to retreat, although I think I saw some cannons looking over here, so maybe if Corwetz was paying attention to that, they would have seen that and maybe start thinking, oh, what is being done down there? Is something going on without my permission? And maybe even start to send some Fireflies or other scouts down to have a look at what is going on. And as I say, this is a large number of Hornets. Not a particularly large number. I'd say we're still in the sort of early game. We're definitely not in the late game. Not early game, sorry, mid game. We're definitely not in the late game yet. Not from what I can see anyway, because, well, we don't really have any major offensives going on particularly. I mean, we do have an original base wiped out, but it's not like the Lord of This is in any situation to actually fight back as of yet. Although if this T2 power gen gets finished by this mass of bot fabricators just focusing down on it, that'll be done in about 20 to 30 seconds time. In fact, a little bit longer than that, because their econ has just stalled, as you could see by the production time for that power gen. Other than that, I think everyone's sort of turtling in right now. We've sort of seen, both players have seen, oh, the Lord of This has been severely weakened. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back, cut my losses, regroup, and push out again later when I do have a greater military advantage. And then we see a commander over here, probably producing some buildings just to snipe any anti-air or scouting attempts that are made by either other player. Which is going to be interesting. Maybe they're going to build a naval position here, although I doubt it, because it is such a small body of water. It wouldn't really be of any use, and it's so far away from the spawn locations that it wouldn't do much either, unless its purpose is to cut off any escape attempts. Another Firefly going over, going to scout, see what's going on. In fact, there goes one of the point defences. And the Firefly are going to go over Corvettes' base. They're going to see all of those levelers. They're going to see the econ field here. They're going to see the blue bottles. And they're now going to be able to see where that anti-air was and what sort of an aggressive path to take. So maybe we'll start to see, yes we do, see the mobilization of the Hornets. They will start stacking, annoyingly. In fact, they're going to sweep down. Are they going to try and snipe the Lord of this? Because that should be enough Hornets to maybe commander snipe the Lord of this. Although again, that is, while a very unethical move to make, at this level of play, I guess you could say it's viable as much as it is hated. In fact, no, they're going to get sniped. Oh wow, that is very poor control in terms of retrograde. They're just going to walk straight through an anti-air field, lose the vast majority of those Hornets, and not even, begin to do any form of lasting damage. In fact, I spoke too soon. The commander's gone. Obviously the lag didn't pick up on the damage there, so that was a commander snipe. Corvettes is gone. Retrograde has exploited perfectly, in fact, the damage done to the Lord of this. So it's going to be easy for Retrograde to clear up the Lord of this. But as I say, that was a rather unethical move, especially in an early alpha game. But as I say, it's viable, but it's unethical. In fact, we have things starting to lay pressure on these walls here. But while the Lord of this isn't making any factories or anything to actually do any lasting damage, they are at this point a sitting duck. They don't even have any anti-air defences or anything, so it's going to be incredibly easy for Retrograde to come in and do another commander snipe, especially considering they already have a fair number of Hornets. They could probably just use those Hornets and take out the commander at this point in time, if I'm honest. It wouldn't be too much of a strain, it wouldn't be too difficult, and I think the Hornets would probably go. And in fact, what have we got here? We've got Retrograde just camping the commander underwater in a random lake surrounded by anti-air. Oh, this is why I want to start commentating on Gentleman's Rules, folks. There we go, there's the factory. Although why we're starting off with an advanced bot factory, I'm not entirely sure. But all of those assisting should make short work of that factory. Especially now they have T2 metal, T2 energy, and a bunch of other T1 metal and T1 energy. In fact, they've stopped again. So maybe the econ has hit rock bottom, it'll have shot up again because they've waited and paused. And then that's all ready, so they can start producing T2 bots. In fact, they're going to continue on the T2 artillery over there. In the meantime, however, we've got a very large number of Hornets here, relatively speaking. I mean, it's only, between 5 and 10. In fact, it is only 5 Hornets they have. Make that 6 when this one's finished. But with a bunch of fabricators and a lack of defence on the part of the Lord of this, that difference is certainly compounded and is going to really start taking effect very soon indeed. But as I say, the Lord of this probably doesn't know that Corwitz is dead. In fact, he does know that Corwitz is dead because it says up the top. Ignore that. Which makes me wonder why the artillery is still pointing in that direction. Maybe it was made at the wrong time. And there go the Fireflies just scouting the base, seeing what there is, and we can assume that the Hornets are going to follow very, very shortly. They're over here, they're all stacked, they're waiting to just move in and snipe that commander. They just need to get the precise fix on the commander's location, and then they can swoop in for that killing blow. In fact, they're going to group all of the Hornets into one, and they are going to move down through here and take that commander to town. Here we go. Maybe just waiting for enough forces, or maybe just waiting to group them all up. But I don't quite see why they aren't making the move just yet. Maybe they're trying to coordinate a sort of three-prong attack so they don't all stack up and get shot down immediately, which is one of the issues with bomber spamming in Alpha. In fact, over here we have just random metal sites going up because they can. Other than that, not a huge amount is happening. Oops. Well, those bombers sidestepping by the look of it. Maybe going to land and wait. Whoa! That's a... that shows the stacking with the bombers. That should be enough, if I'm honest, to snipe this commander. In fact, that artillery is really going to start making a hit. At this point, it's just going for Fireflies, who are going to scout over again, see what's going on, realise, oh, there's not actually all that much. There's a few anti-air positions here. There's definitely air defence towers, but other than that, here come the Hornets, here goes the commander snipe, and there goes the commander. There is the game. 2 retrograde 4 against the Lourdes and Corwitz. Other than that, that is the end. Good game. Stick around, folks, for a lot more shoutcasts coming your way. Sort of ladder games, gentlemen's games, higher end games, along with updates as and when they come out. I'm going to be finishing off The Walking Dead at some point over the next few weeks. Other than that, do share this with your friends. Let's start again. If you know they're interested in Planetary Annihilation, because as I say, I'm trying to make your one-stop shop for your YouTube Planetary Annihilation updates. So don't forget that. Other than that, do feel free to drop a like or even ask a question in the comments. I'll be more than happy to try and answer. And as I say, subscribe for more content coming very, very soon. Thanks again for watching, and have a nice day.